Peter Lalor is here. Welcome to Melbourne. Pete, nice to see you.
I love being in Melbourne this time of year, Gerard. Do you reckon Melbourne people know how good it is down here right now? It's kind of,
how good is it?
It's good. I reckon you're all sort of pulling the intravenous drip of AFL out of your arms. You're you're looking around a little bit, smelling the air. There's that anticipation about cricket. The weather's beautiful. I've just got these little touchstones I love to go. Can I do a little Lawler's tour of Melbourne?
Yes.
Yeah. I've got one pub that I always visit, the Labour in Vain on Brunswick Street.
Yep.
Hidden gem. I bet you've never been in there, Gerard.
I don't think I have.
No.
Only if you've taken me.
It has just held its line since the 1950s, I reckon, this pub, and it still serves some very good beer. My wife could probably put together a 5-hour podcast about the cheesecake that she eats on Gertrude Street, so I have to take her there to a little cafe called Solaire. Lunch at Marion's, best lunch in Melbourne. If you're that wine bar kind of wanker, that I can do, I can do a little bit of that. And also lunch at Mario's, and then breakfast at the Galleon in St Kilda. Been there for 40 years. I love that. They are the sort of they're my comfort zones in Melbourne. I always go to those places. So that's what I've been doing the last few days. Thanks for having me down.
Peter Lalor's exquisite tour of Melbourne.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
And you've got your Cricket et al. Merchandise.
Oh, the T-shirt. Yes, the Cricket et al. Yeah, Kitty and I got a few T-shirts printed up. By rights, they should have holes in them.
That's what they will do soon enough, I'm sure. Stains and holes.
Yeah. So we're the full catastrophe now. We're probably moving into merchandise. Who'd have thunk it? You know, two old blokes at their typewriters trying to sell merchandise. Yeah.
Where are we with white ball cricket, Pete?
It's a good question, isn't it? It's a really good question. Fascinating to listen to Crash talk about it. I reckon Crash is your pub test in a lot of ways on this one. It fails the pub test every time. But I'm not sure that there really is anyone much in the pub on this issue. Like yourself, you sort of say, well, on principle, we should get a bit outraged about this. And I can hear it in Michael Clarke's voice. And I get that too, because in the Michael Clarke era, it was very much expected that the captain would play the one-days. I do recall an incident, actually, where Ricky Ponting took a one-day series off. The team lost the first two games, so guess what? Ricky had to cancel his holidays and come back and lead the team. I think, ideally, you want your captain playing those games. You know, what does it say? That your captain would rather go to Coldplay and watch Coldplay and not the cricket? Says a bit about his taste in music, just by the by. I won't insult everybody there.
Was that a mistake? So if you've got an RDO, you can use it any way you like.
Yeah.
So if you release him, you release him.
Yeah, that's right.
Does it fail the pub test? Do you lose the PR battle while the team's getting hammered in Perth that the captain's at Coldplay?
Yeah.
Does that matter?
Yeah, you do. Yeah, that does fail the pub test. But I'll go back to the pub, and I'll say this about the pub. That there is the guy that won the World Cup, ODI World Cup winning captain. I remember when he came back to Australia, I remember those street parades that didn't happen.
Yeah.
There was nobody there. I mean, I'm not even sure if the customs officer looked up when he walked through the airport. The one-day cricket has really suffered, is really suffering, and if any form of the game has to suffer, it has to be the white ball game. The bottom line on this, if the guiding principle is that test match cricket matters more than anything else, I'm really comfortable with that. Let's not forget, Cameron Green isn't playing this series because he played a one-day. Now, I'm not saying that he shouldn't have played those one-days. He should have. But one of the first lines of debate that emerged around that topic is, what's he doing playing a stupid one-day series anyway? You know, he's a test player. And I think we're all invested at that level. If I was the broadcaster, I'd be furious. But I wonder if it's been built in. I remember even back in the days when Nine had the rights, I remember a very heated meeting between Pat Howard, who was sort of running cricket then, and Ian Chappell and Richie Beno, and Ian Chappell read him the Riot Act over this very issue about who's the right person. But more, I suppose that was more about sort of the PR of it and the marketing of it. And that's the other point, Gerard. There has been no marketing of this.
So I suspect now that was deliberate.
Yeah.
So last Monday I was naively asking why. Like 25,000 without any effort in Melbourne, 21,000 in Adelaide, 19,000 in Perth. In hindsight, these are actually great crowds for the fact that it wasn't being pushed. And I suspect this is why it wasn't being pushed. The administration lined these games up and the team said, that's not going to fly.
Yeah.
We're not taking everyone to Perth, then sending them home, then taking them all back to Perth. We're not doing that.
No, it's that trip across the country with your fast bowlers. Here's my version of the pub test. It's the Indian restaurant test from last night. My brother-in-law, Melbourne, sports mad. His best mate is sports mad too. Had to drop his kid into town the other day to do something or other. I thought, what's going on at the MCG? This is a cricket mad Melburnian who didn't know that there was a one-day game at the MCG. Yep. Parked easily enough, went into the ground, had a good day. But he did not know that game was on. It's a junk format at the moment, unless the World Cup is on. One-day cricket and T20 cricket is a junk format. I like the idea of replenishing the team. If you're looking at World Cup cycles, of putting these younger players in, there are only I think 3 members of the World Cup side, winning World Cup side, that played at the MCG, that played in that last match. It's around that anyway. Yep. Shouldn't have taken a selfie at Coldplay, Pat.
That's the bit where it all falls over. So it is true so when we ran the Argus report all those years ago, when there was the real tension between the formats, we decided as a nation out the back of that was Test cricket above all else. So in a way, we are being true to that, aren't we?
Yeah, that's right. We are being true to that, and that has to be, and that's essential. So what do you do then? Do you designate a captain? Because you've got a bowling captain, it's problematic, isn't it? You want to you really got to take care of him. And let's not forget, this is 5 tests against India. I want you to do absolutely everything to get Pat Cummins through those 5 tests. I don't know if he can, and India have already signalled that they won't have the same captain for all 5 tests, which we should get to that topic. But if you take the captaincy off him, this was also the guy who did such a great job at the World Cup. I mean, you read Glenn Maxwell's book and his talk about how well, and we saw it too, that creative, brash captaincy from what probably was a mid to high ranking team, but not necessarily a team that should have won that World Cup. They did it on the back of some very good captaincy and some very good leadership from Pat Cummins.
Yeah, so don't cut off your nose to spite your face here.
Yeah, you got to be aware of that, don't you?
So you have to just wear this series for what it is and hope people understand.
Yeah,
and don't dig too deep into it. So one of the problems was that the understudies were just so bad. So there was always, in some years, there was a conceit that Australia's second 11 could be beating these nations that come out.
Yeah, that's right.
We can't be pinning ourselves to that anymore.
Yeah, well, Dan Breddick wrote an article in the Age about it the other day where he was talking about the tactics, and I think he was spot on too. Australia are playing a form of one-day cricket that's perfectly suited to flat tracks, in the subcontinent and the usual decks that you get for one-day cricket. Didn't necessarily get them for these games. No, that MCG deck was hellish to play one-day cricket on, but they are playing a format of cricket where you just try and make as many runs as you can in that first power play. They didn't adapt to the circumstances, but maybe they're engineering a game that works better across the world. And isn't it ironic, really, that the world champions Australia have a game that doesn't work at home in one-day cricket. And India are on their way out here now. They're probably pulling up at the airport as we speak. They have a test team that's better away than at home too. We're all tourists now, Gerard. Yeah, at home he feels like a stranger.
It used to be our premium form of entertainment across the summer. The big day in your state was the one-dayer.
Yeah.
But that's a long time ago now.
Mate, they didn't even bother putting one on in Sydney.
Oh, have you got a T20?
Yeah, one of them.
Okay.
Yeah. I'd love to know Mario's thoughts on the T20s.
Oh, I know. Mario. The natural game debate is an interesting one.
Yeah, that was that point about kind of playing that game that's not suited to Australian conditions, and they didn't. did they? They didn't adapt. I think there's a lot of people in that top order who hopefully have learned some harsh lessons about that stuff. It's all very well to play like you're on a concrete deck in the subcontinent, but you're not, and you're going to get found out pretty quickly.
All right, the test
Tell you what,
front.
Steve
Mara,
Smith
yep.
looked great, just quietly, and that really excites me about the Test summer. I said that last week as well, but I'm very impressed with where Steve Smith is at with his batting at the moment.
Is the flip side of that you're worried about Marnus?
Well, yeah, Marnus is always the flip side of Steve, isn't he? Marnus. Yeah, I am concerned about Marnus. Yep, he's got to get his act together. He's slipping.
All right, India. There's a suitable sense of mystery around India, I reckon. Yeah. What the team, how they're going to be. It feels very Indian, and there's a bit of rancor around it now. When will the captain be here? When will he not be here? The coach is a combative figure, which might add to the spice of the summer as well, I think. Gautam Gambhir held his press conference before India travelled to Australia.
And so is that coach. There's a coach that's stepped down from he was a member of the Modi government. He stepped down from the government to do his job in cricket. He might not be able to step back in if he keeps going the way he's going at the moment. Losing that series at home has put a lot of pressure on him. And he's not and he is a combative guy. He's a very competitive guy. He had an angry reaction to Ricky expressing an opinion, and fair enough. But it's not exactly Ravi Shastri coming down all worldly and wise and promoting the series, is it? They do have some issues. He's saying in that press conference, I find this difficult to believe. He doesn't know if Rohit Sharma will play the first test or not. Now, there might be a very good reason for that. I'm assuming there is. But that's a really unusual way to enter a series, particularly because it then, remember when Australia had a debate around the openers, Gerard, last week? They've got a debate around their openers too. I mean, what are they going to do? Ishwaran, who is a potential sort of support act there, he's had a pretty miserable time in his 4 innings here. KL Rahul looked good, but hasn't made any runs. And I think they've sort of said he might be the guy to go up, but he's normally in the middle order. Of course, you could also try with Shubman Gill, who made his debut at the MCG, didn't he? I think he opened in that game. I'm pretty sure he did. But they've got a few ifs and buts coming down with them. But the thing that's taking up the most room in the luggage of the Indian cricket team is that loss at home. That's humiliating. Their fans do not like that. You reckon the heat turns on Australian cricket when they lose? God, when you lose in India, when you lose at home, that's serious stuff. That's why Gautam Gambhir is not a happy man at the moment. He'd be a very anxious man, I'd suggest.
If Rohit's not captain, who is?
Bumrah's the vice captain. Yep. He'll step up. There we go. We will have 2 fast bowling captains in Perth for the first test. That's a nice little setup, isn't it? It is really the age of the bowler. It's nice to see. They've reasserted themselves in cricket.
It will help emphasise, I think, is the central figure for India in the series Bumrah?
Oh, yes, I think he is. I think, he is. Yeah, he's critical to them. I mean, they've shown in the last 2 series that they don't necessarily have to rely on Bumrah to play well in these conditions, and they have worked up a battery of bowlers who can do all right in these conditions. They'll miss Shami, of course, but the narrative's going to be all around our man Virat, isn't he? He draws Kohli. He draws all the focus in Indian cricket, and will do. And this will be his last visit here as a Test player. And hey, who even knows if he'll make it to the 5th Test?
There's a few big questions that sit over this series like this. So he's the scouting party, isn't he? He's already arrived in Australia. He's come ahead of time.
Has he?
He has.
Yeah, I didn't see him at the Labor in vain, Joe.
Do you think is there a renaissance in him here?
Yeah. He's a better batter in these conditions. He'll be up for this series. I mean, it's a ridiculous thing to say, really, is that he'll be up for this series, but we do now have Test series that are 2nd rank and 3rd rank. He loves playing cricket in Australia. I think he's one of those Indian players who rises to the occasion here in the tradition of the greats like Ravi, who we mentioned before, like Sunny Gavaskar, even like the young, like Tendulkar, they want to come out here because it's an important cricket country to them. It allows them to play a more expansive game of cricket than they're allowed to play at home, I think, as batters. And Virat's had such a great story here. This must be his 4th or 5th tour, Gerard. You can tell I haven't done my pre-tour
I did
research.
all the numbers on that the other day, yeah.
Yeah, so, it'd be a nice place for him to finish up to in a way. So watch that space.
And he's gone from public enemy number one to he's won his place in affection here. I think he's walked that line from the young tyro to the absolute villain of the piece to now you've been around so long and succeeded against us so well that we just admire you.
Yeah, 100%, I think. Yeah, I'd assume that most Australian cricket fans feel the same way. You know, remember when he flipped the bird at the Australian crowd when he first got in? That's when I knew I liked the guy, to be honest with you. And all those angry exchanges and that blew with Smith when we were in India over the DRS. I mean, he holds his line and he holds it really well on the field. And you've got to look at him. He's a bit like a Warner type of player. But when he put his arms around Smith figuratively that was the World Cup, wasn't it? Yeah, it was there in England when he asked the crowd that was giving Smith hell to stop it. It was an Indian, sort of expat Indian crowd. I think we all sort of loved him for that.
All right, I got a couple of questions to finish with, Pete. Same questions as to Crash yesterday, just to set the tone for the Test series ahead. Is Shami in the touring party? No. If Marnus fails in the first 2 tests, should he be replaced? That will be a national debate. A couple pointed out Rohit Sharma's wife is due to have a baby, which it's interesting that's been carefully not said in India. I think it's sort of gently known, but that's not been offered as any sort of explanation in anything I've read out of India. So
maybe it doesn't pass the pub test in India, Jed. Or you probably have a chai shop test.
And it's Crash's birthday today. Oh, that's nice. Crash, happy birthday.
Happy birthday to Crash.
All right, these are the 2 questions I asked Crash yesterday. The first is, should Australia expect to win this series at home?
Yes. Yep. Not one word answers, Gerard.
And you can
elaborate.
More expensive?
No, they have to win this series at home. It'd be humiliating for them to lose. We'll have a very different narrative on our hands if Australia lose this series. They should beat that Indian team. I still think they're a very good team. Sure, there's some issues around, but I reckon that if you look at that 11, that's a great 11, and you look at the reserves, they're pretty good too. They should win. They should win it comfortably, I reckon.
Okay. And are there more questions sitting over India or Australia coming in?
There's definitely more questions over India, and that's probably why you say Australia should win this. You know, we're talking about their captaincy. We're talking about some of their players. Older players are in decline. They've lost this last series. There's so much more pressure on them.
Nathan McSweeney's going to join me out of the 10 o'clock news.
Oh, he's good. I met him the other morning. Went down to the MCG. He's a great kid.
Share your impressions.
Nice, Gerard. He's one of these pleasant young men. Can I say that? I'm old enough to be his dad. I can say that. Comfortable in his own skin, stood up well. This is just in a press conference as well, but also the things I'm gleaning from around cricket is he's a really impressive fella. And I think you can see, some narratives are already talking about him as the next Test captain. I mean, give us a break. Let's just play. Let's just play a bit of cricket. Yeah, but I like the way he's gone about his career. He was not that wonder kid. He was not the Sam Constas or the Philip Hughes or the Will Pukovski who gets into first-class cricket and is averaging 50 in the blink of an eye. He had to learn his game. He had to move state, so he's got some experience through doing that. And he didn't have to make any great changes to his game to get to where he is now. I asked him about this the other day. He said, no, when I made my first score, when I got to South Australia, I knew I had the game for it, and I haven't really done much since. So his only failings early on was a lack of experience, and perhaps in the mental capacity. I like him. I'm happy about this. I mean, I would have been happy if Sam Constas was there too. Kid Constas would have been a great story, but McSweeney's nearly as good a story. Yeah, and all of Adelaide's up. They're so excited in Adelaide, Gerard, and we can get all Melbourne and New South Wales about this. I think we need to constantly point out that he's from Queensland.
Yes, Queensland.
Can't have them getting uppity in Adelaide. They get unbearable.
So this is state of mind. I'm going to ask him this. Once you know you're opening, tell me if you're in his position, do you go straight home and start watching clips of Jasprit Bumrah, or push that away and go, no, I don't want to know about that just yet?
Well, I tell you, if it was me, I would never look at a clip of Jasprit Bumrah. Well, you just learn that you're in deep trouble. Of course you do. Of course you go home and look at it and important fact too, that as he points out, he always trains against a new ball. So he's always facing a new ball in the nets. When you're a number 3 batter, you do that. Gideon did point out on Cricket at O yesterday that George Bailey had said that he's been in quite often inside the first 10 overs. Gideon crunched the numbers and they're not great there. That's something to watch. But yeah, you are studying Jasprit Bumrah for what it's worth. I mean, he's going to get you. He's just going to get you. You know that when Jasprit Bumrah bowls.
Yep.
He's going to get you.